Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a time machine and heading back 3,000 years to unlock the world of Leviticus chapter 7. This isn't just a list of ancient rules. It's a fascinating look at a sacred script, a detailed blueprint for how people connected with God.
So, let's really think about that. What did it actually look like? Well, get ready for a world of fire, specific rituals, and divine laws, where every single action, every detail was absolutely packed with meaning. This was a carefully choreographed dance between humanity and the holy.
All right, let's dive in, starting with verse 1. It introduces something called the trespass offering. So picture this. Someone has crossed a line, violated a sacred boundary, maybe without even meaning to. To make things right, they have to bring an animal to this holy place. You can just feel the atmosphere here is different. It's charged, because what's about to happen is, as the verse says, most holy.
Now, verses 2 through 5 walk us through the ritual step by step. First, verse 2, the animal is killed right there in the designated holy spot. Then, still in verse 2, see the priest take the blood and sprinkle it around all sides of the altar. Next, in verses 3 and 4, things get really precise. The priest carefully removes all the fatty tail, the fat around the organs, the kidneys, a piece of the liver. These were seen as the best, richest parts, and they were reserved for God alone. And finally, verse 5. Those parts are placed on the altar fire. You can almost hear that sizzle and see the smoke rising up, a fragrant offering to the Lord.
So what happens next? Verse 6 shifts the scene. We're now in a special, holy courtyard. Only the male priests are gathered here, dressed in their linen garments, and they are eating their share of the offering. This isn't just a quick bite, it's a sacred meal. It has to be eaten in this holy place, because the food itself is still considered most holy.
Verse 7 answers a practical question. Who gets what? It makes it clear that this offering and the sin offering follow the same rule. It's simple. The priest who actually performs the ritual, the one who makes the atonement, he's the one who gets the rest of the meat. You can picture him, his sacred duty done, receiving his portion. This was his divinely appointed paycheck.
And that wasn't all. Verse 8 adds another perk. For a burnt offering, the priest got to keep the animal's hide, which was super valuable. Verse 9 moves on to grain offerings. If someone brought something baked or cooked in a pan, it went to the specific priest who offered it. But verse 10 lays out a rule for sharing. Any uncooked grain, maybe mixed with oil, maybe dry, was divided up equally among all the priests, the sons of Aaron.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about offerings for sin. Now we switch gears to the peace offering, which has a completely different vibe. This one is all about fellowship, thanksgiving, and celebration. It's basically a sacred meal shared between God, the priests, and the person making the offering. And verses 11 through 14 show it's a real feast. People would bring unleavened cakes, wafers, and even leavened bread to go with it.
But this party has a deadline. Verse 15 lays down a strict rule for a peace offering given out of thankfulness. Imagine a family gathered, joyfully eating this sacred meal together. There's this feeling of celebratory urgency in the air, because they have to finish every single bite before the sun comes up. The blessing is for right now.
Now, verses 16 and 17 give us a slight exception. If the offering was for a vow or just a free will gift, the family could eat the leftovers the next day. But there is a hard stop. Picture this. It's the morning of the third day. Any meat that's still left, it can't be eaten. It must be taken and completely burned with fire. Its sacred time has expired.
And verse 18 explains why this rule is so serious. If you were to eat that meat on the third day, the offering becomes an abomination. A holy thing has been desecrated by disrespect. Imagine the crushing weight of guilt on the person who did that, knowing their entire act of worship was just rejected because they didn't follow the rules.
The rules about purity are absolutely central. Verse 19 says, if the holy meat touches anything ritually unclean, it has to be burned. Then verses 20 and 21 focus on the people themselves. See, in that culture, you could become unclean in various ways that weren't sinful, but just made you unfit for holy spaces for a time. If you ignored your unclean status and ate this holy food, the penalty was severe. You would be cut off, basically exiled from the entire community.
Okay, now we get some dietary laws that applied to everyone. Verses 22 through 25 are crystal clear. You do not eat the fat from an ox, sheep, or goat. That specific fat was reserved for God on the altar. Then, verses 26 and 27 give us one of the biggest rules in the whole book. You shall not eat any blood from any creature. Picture the life force of an animal being poured out onto the ground, returning to the earth, never to be eaten by a person.
And just to make sure the point lands, verse 27 repeats the penalty. Whoever eats any blood, that person shall be cut off from his people. The idea here is profound. The life of a creature is in its blood, and life itself belongs to God. To consume blood was to cross a fundamental boundary, to take something that belonged only to the Creator.
So verses 28 through 30 really drive home how personal this all was. This wasn't a drop-off service. Verse 30 is so specific. His own hands shall bring the offerings. Picture it. The worshiper himself carrying the choice parts, the fat and the breast, and bringing them forward. That personal act makes the entire offering so much more meaningful.
And verse 30 introduces us to a unique ritual action called the wave offering. Look at the priest. He takes the breast of the animal and literally moves it back and forth, side to side before the Lord. It's a symbolic gesture, as if presenting the offering to God who is present in every direction before it's given to the priest. Then, in verse 32, we see another movement, the heave offering. This time, the priest takes the right thigh. He lifts it straight up, an upward motion toward heaven. This symbolizes it's a contribution, something heaved up to God from the worshiper's portion, before it goes to the officiating priest.
So let's clarify where these special pieces end up. Verses 31 and 33 lay it all out. The breast that was waved belongs to the whole priestly family, Aaron and his sons. But the right thigh that was heaved, that's a special portion just for the one priest who is officiating that day's sacrifice. And verses 35 and 36 make it absolutely permanent. This isn't a temporary arrangement, it's a statute forever. Imagine a line of priests stretching forward through time, an unbroken chain, generation after generation, each one provided for by this same sacred command.
And verse 37 is like the grand summary. It's the closing credits, listing all the different laws and offerings we've just covered: the burnt offering, grain offering, sin offering, trespass offering, and peace offering. It ties this whole complex, beautiful system of worship together. Finally, verse 38 zooms all the way out and gives us the origin story. First, picture that dramatic scene: Moses on the smoky, thundering peak of Mount Sinai, receiving this law directly from God. Then, the scene shifts to the huge expanse of the wilderness below, where the Israelites are about to put these holy instructions into practice for the very first time.
And that brings us to the end. We've walked through this incredibly detailed system where every single action was prescribed. And it leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? In a world that so often values spontaneous worship, what can we learn from a tradition where this kind of precision was the ultimate way to show devotion? Why was getting the details exactly right the key to connecting with the divine?